11:29. So it's still morning.
Wow.
Good morning. Good
Good
morning. Grand
morning.
Rising.
No doubt.
Wow, this is a struggle.
Yes. So
It
guess what?
is
It
a
took me off
connection.
Twitter, and I had to actually come back onto the app. The link you sent. You hear me?
Yes.
So it's got to be them because you said let's do it, and I gave a time, and that's when they had time to prepare.
I've never had problems sending a link before.
Yeah.
And it just kept saying not sent, not sent. And when I
Well,
would try to resend it, like, what? Like, it was saying connecting for a long period of time. I
hmm
was like, what is going on here?
no
The
doubt.
usual suspect.
hmm The reason why the title it's so connected to so many things, but it's so simple. It's so simple. Can we see them as they are? Um, if you hear most victims, of those of us who know the code, most victims will be violently, deeply emotionally, and intellectually opposed to addressing white people as they are. Just the word white supremacy or racism sends most of us into such cognitive dissonance when we start hearing accurately about what it is and how they do it. Um, I've just, I think I reduced it down to as we're not seeing them as they are. We're seeing them as the big monster, um, the big monster in the room that can't be defeated, and that's why we have strong opposition to wanting to be in direct opposition to what they do and how they do it. We really don't see them as they are. I was talking to a fellow victim this morning about things I was reading in a book called "The Half Has Never Been Told," about how that whites knew that if they wanted to drive a black male crazy, he would be allowed to see his son being sold on the market, naked and sold, and pinched and prodded, and that would drive them crazy. And I just took note that they didn't say his wife and children being sold made him go crazy. It was if he had to endure watching his so-called son, his offspring, be sold. Uh, that victim he started saying that was depressing and that he didn't feel like going to work and this and that, knowing these things. And I said to myself, well, that's a choice. You choose to let their terrorism deflate you, to give you, to terrify you, to make you timid, to intimidate you, and even thinking against them, intimidate you into not thinking. And simply because he doesn't want to admit that he's terrified of them, as ignorant as he is of them. But if we're willing to see what they've done and see how they do it, it makes them seem like, oh, these are just people. Wicked, but just people. And their wickedness is systematic, it's deliberate, it's not like some wild, beastly animal, unpredictable. They're very predictable once you understand how it works and what they do. I'll let anybody else speak because I think I'm rambling on.
No, you're not rambling. Makes perfect sense.
I think the racists don't want us to talk reasonably about what these people have done. They want us to be simply overruled by emotions that cause us to be timid, cause us to be terrorized. They're terrified. Um, One of the things terrified victims do, I think, victims who have been intimidated, we constantly complain about the effects of racism on black people. That's a way to cop out and a way of being afraid. You don't want to fight, you just want to complain. You don't want to resist, you want to refrain. You don't really want to say, what can I do? You don't want to divest of the pleasure you get from the system of white supremacy racism. So you'd rather constantly complain about other victims and not about the people who make us this way. That's the logical thing to do. If anybody's telling me about like how bad their kids are over and over and over, it's gonna come down to who the hell and what the hell made them this way. I'm tired of hearing about how bad they are. That's not the solution. What the hell is making them this way? But people who don't want to solve a problem, who don't want to solve themselves as a part of the problem, can't really see as they ought to see, can't perceive, can't even really look. Because if you just look at our interaction when you interact with white people, just look at their fit. Most of them are shaking with so much anxiety. They're so worried that I'm gonna just blurt out nigger. I'm just gonna tell this nigger I don't like them talking to me and I'm uncomfortable around their blackness. That is a very that's a schizophrenic racist. That's what they are. They're in total power, but they choose fear by their thought pattern and emotional response that convinces them that they are a race and the race, and therefore they must practice racism. If we see them as they are, they're not invincible. They're people. I think they don't want us to see them as they are because that's what we'll see. A worm, just like us, but very clever worm, a very determined worm, but nonetheless a worm that can be dealt with by other worms. Does anybody else notice that with especially black male victims who consider themselves to be tough guys? They get so much anxiety and fear coursing through them from reasonable, logical discussions about white supremacy. The ones who are so quick to talk about gun rights and gun this and gun that. We're very quick to attack one another when talking, supposed to be talking about the problem, people, but we end up bashing each other. And I see it as a fear mode. I see it as like it's cognitive dissonance. Reality and what's coming out of their mouths as their belief system just don't add up. And that is terrifying to people who pretend to be tough, who pretend to be strong or think they know what tough and strong is about when they haven't even studied their enemies' horrifically tough acts against us. I told a racist yesterday, again, for about the 10th time, not to call me honey, but to call me by my name. And since I was a little irritated, I decided that I would tell her that you people used to eat us, delectably enjoying eating us. So I cannot allow you to call me a food condiment, no matter what the cost. Meaning, I didn't give a damn if they take the job in the moment. Because I was refusing to be a punk in the moment and not tell a racist that I didn't want to be called by a name she lyingly has convinced other black people was a term of endearment. And when I looked at her for what she was and the 4 or 5 white people standing behind her in line, they all looked like punks, cowards, because I was choosing not to be a punk and a coward. They looked terrified, and I spoke very calmly, very simply, but very direct and certain. I hope you guys have been getting better at looking white people in the eye and being only serious with them in your interactions. Like the code says, study them. Be very studious. Just be like, wow, isn't it amazing how they lie all the time? They are so good in their emotional responses, a lie, in their reasoning, they're lying. So everything that comes out of their mouth, we have to stop and say, look at this here. This person just said something to me outside of the context of reality, and I'm supposed to not question it and just go along. Like what they're saying is true. Or am I going to look at this worm ass, deceitful, evil coward using a lie to try to paralyze my mind, to stupefy my mind on just basic interactions? That's what we should be seeing. This is a terrorist attack against my mind when a little white woman walks up and asks, "Oh, hi, can I get your help, please?" That is a psychopathic killer. That is a psychopathic killer because that killer knows nowhere she's ever set foot on the planet has she had to be afraid of a nigger male. When she could just raise the tone of her voice and 10 nigger males will come beat that nigger male to death. So I think we should start seeing them as they are in our basic everyday interactions with them and confront them on the ground of truth that they demand that we not have anything to do with when we're dealing with them. We should see that our personalities need to be deconstructed. Our personality is just a service to the system of white supremacy racism. All the ceaseless hoops we've had to jump through, all the acceptable and unacceptable, ultimately, behavior patterns that they have conditioned into us to make this insanity more bearable for them. Not for us, but for them. The more delusional we are, the more comfortable they are. Do we see these people as they are? I tell you what, not if you look at television passively, they will destroy your mind. You will believe the facial expressions, the tones, the body language that these races project as being these different emotions, these different concepts. Um, the way they're teaching us to look at them as if they are ignorant, when yet they're ignorant, but we're the educators based on what they've done. That doesn't make any damn sense. That doesn't make any damn sense. A dog has been captured by the dog pound and is due to be executed. He understands how that system works more than the dog catcher and the executioners. Right. It's illogical, totally ludicrous. But yet we let white people talk to us daily like this. Like they're ignorant of their hostility, their degradation, and their niggerization of us. They're ignorant. They're not ignorant. They are evil. Evil. Perfectly evil. I was watching yesterday a white man have a meltdown because he didn't want to use his debit card as a credit card and be charged a 1% surcharge, even though it was a credit card clearly on it and didn't say debit. 1% of his bill he was trying to avoid, but that wasn't his issue. Was he was trying to intimidate a black female. Intimidate a black female. And I couldn't resist the urge to turn around and full of white people in the room. And I said, look at this. Look at this guy right here. He's pouting over 1%. He's pouting over 1%. Or is it that he just wants to see the manager because he wants to threaten this black girl? And then to the whole room, I said, this is what they use to threaten and intimidate us in the States with an economic lynching. When they're displeased over nothing, small, nothing. Yet we're supposed to be terrified right now and not look at this little worm for what he's doing. Look at this. He's got his arms crossed and he's pouting. Because no, not this credit card, the other one. Honestly, I wanted to kick his little white ass. I just wanted to put, I know just one hit. He couldn't even have taken one. One hit. But I know that everybody black in that room would have testified against me in court first. So I've refrained from doing so. I'll let someone else speak about this phenomenon of not looking at these people for what they are while they're in the acts of their terrorism. Anybody else want to speak?
If anybody else want to speak, just raise your hand or request a mic, and you'll be allowed to speak. I'm
I will
trying to.
add this. Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna add the code talks about the white supremacy. Well, a lot of people have talked about too. I like the way Dr. Amos Wilson and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing put this this I believe this phenomenon. Um, Many of us seek distraction from the war against us. Many of us are deliberately engaged in ignoring the war against us. So while we're ignoring the war against us, right, all non-white people, what the racists do now is they want us to focus on being black and what is against black people. When any domination is illegitimate and incorrect under white supremacy. If you ignore global white supremacy, and you just hyper focus on what they're doing in the small space called America concept or so called, with the small group of those of us who are in direct contact with the whites who make up that concept, um, you'll get you'll get debilitated with disgust and despair because you will think it's just us. That is a narrow, narrow, narrow view, and racists want you to keep that view. It's debilitating and devastating psychologically. It's much better to look at the world view. That's why we should know how he whipped the yellow man. We should know how he whipped the so-called red man. We should know how he whipped the beige sand nigger, who was a white man, probably true and through, the ones who speak the language of Arabic. They could be just simply colorists, but I think there's a reason they call them sand niggers because they're not considered pure whites. They've been tainted according to the ideas of white supremacists, the old liners anyway. But I think if we see them globally as they are, we'll see the same tactics everywhere. We'll see the same drive for destruction, domination, and subjugation at all costs. Sometimes the cost is greater, sometimes the cost is lower. Sometimes they learn through us to administer white supremacy through the minds of black people, non-white people. They learn from doing that with us. They perfected that with us. That's why all the newly dominated victims are heavy on colorism. They learned how to perfect that through us and using sex as a weapon, as a tool for to be the so-called expression of white supremacy racism through colorism, administering the maintenance of white supremacy. If we see them as they are, we'll see it everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And we have to remember what I always remind us. The white supremacists have never let any of their victims beat them, ever. That's why they've always remained white supremacists. If you're trapped on a little island being told when you can come off and when you can and which you can get on it, you just won a battle. You didn't win a war, just won a temporary battle. Domination continued. I won't even say the name of the little island place. Yep, 10 basic stops to minimize conflict. Indeed. Basic stuff. Basics. When there's less conflict between us, I think there's more conflict between the racists. It seemed like what they were doing when they were most comfortable during the chattel enslavement portion, the formalized of formal white supremacy. They had more time to wage war on each other for the resources of niggerdom or for the spoils of the captives. I think that's one of the things we seen during the so-called COVID thing. White people had to deal with more white people. Black people were too busy trying to not get sick and to keep working. So they implode if we just do small things to improve our communication with each other. We should be motivated. The more tragedy we see, every time I see a white person trying to show off a black person that they're sexually suing, which is nearly every day, they literally try their hardest to bring these people in front of me. I ignore them through the room. I make them walk around. I make them spend more time than they want to, just trying to get my attention. Um, Whenever they do that, whenever we stop our conflict, it should be from the motivations of what they've done to destroy us and how they've harmed us. It should be like a motivator. When we read about lynchings and we read about the murders and the rapes, it should be a motivator to be more resolved to resist the system of white supremacy's influence, to be more determined to be courteous to one another, to be more determined to be no contact, no conflict, to be more determined not to be overwhelmed by loneliness, knowing that that's the role of a soldier. The war is supposed to be lonely. You're fighting a war. Be more resolved not to be taken in with shadow boxing with other victims because we know it doesn't yield anything but benefits for them. Every time I think about wanting to get angry, when a tough black person gets angry with me and I'm like, I want to turn my mind into, I should just fuck this nigga. I turn my mind more into, I see those pictures of the birth of a nation when the little black boy was hiding with his ears covered next to the white man shooting at Nat Turner and them after he went and told. That's who I see to remind me that what I'm really seeing here is a person who is totally terrorized and made timid by the system of white supremacy. And their only hope is to lash out at me. Lash out at me. That's what they've been taught. When you wave the white flag, you lash out at other niggers who haven't waved it yet.
White people, racist man and racist woman, they want us to argue with each other, and be in conflict with each other. So my duty is to do the opposite of that. I want to do the opposite of whatever white people want me to do. They want me to be discourteous towards another non-white person, another black person. Heck no. You can't pay me enough. You can't. And it's really sad when I hear it. I try to stay away from it, but it's really really sad when I hear us at each other. Um, but I also understand and know that that's the programming, that's the training, right? So, and it's, no matter how many times I say it, racist man and racist woman wants to be at conflict with each other. No matter how many times I say it, I know that confused non-white person, they're not going to get it right away. And sometimes we get it and we'll stop for a day or two and then we right back at it because we're used to the drama. We're used to the toxic, um we're just used to it. We're just used to all that. And but we have to get to the point where we're not used to it anymore, that we're uncomfortable with it. Like, nah, I don't want to do that. You have to say to yourself every day, I don't want to be in conflict with another non-white person. Save that energy for the white people. Please. Please. But oh, go ahead, EJ.
I think when we admit that it makes us feel strong when we're reminded that we're weak, it makes us feel strong to fight with each other. We only do it because somewhere our psyche knows I'm a weak nothing. I have nothing. That's really what we're being told. You have nothing to contribute against the enemy, so fight your own. Somewhere the racists convince us of that deep inside of our psyche. One of the things the code says about black people who say that racism is a problem and they don't want you to mention white supremacy racism to them, the code gets real serious and says, don't say anything or do anything against them and try to stay away from them as much as possible. And if they're in a room with you, try to remove yourself. Be courteous, be polite, but try not. It's because we're dealing with a volatile bomb. This person has really, really been convinced there's nothing they can do about white power. So anybody that tries to remind them that they already have a duty or something that told them that that's not true. It's normal to resist illegitimate domination. It's normal. It's normal. They fight uncovering that part of themselves again, that little child that says, I don't want to do this. And then the racist convince them that, yes, you do. I'll kill you. I'll take everything from you. You won't be happy. You won't enjoy it. Yeah, I think that's what we're dealing with. When they don't even want to look at the 10 stops as being viable, when these seem to be very intelligent enough to debate and argue people, they really, when they can't just do the small stuff or don't want to look at the small stuff, we're dealing with a person who has really been harmed by the racist, who's really been convinced deeply that white people are God or next to God. We hear it all the time. I heard a black female who was in one of these little super nigger movies recently say, when I hear no, I take it as God directing my path. So when white people tell you no for a role, no for a job, no for a screenplay or whatever, it's God. Interesting, because to be able to ask and beg white people, you said God took you there. And now that you're there, and when they tell you no, it's God again, you're equating white people with God. You're equating having a job from white people with God. That's what these people are doing when they get on stage to showcase victims and they talk about God. What they're saying is white people are God to me. They've taken every ounce of self-respect from me. They are God. We have to look at these victims, these other victims, as they are truly other victims. Victims. So to be mad at them, oh my God, it's hard. It's like being mad at a 3-year-old. What for? It's best to just say, and keep it moving. Continue. I don't know, the lady that's got her hand up.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Thanks for letting me come up on the stage real quick. Shout out to everybody in the room. Yeah, I like I'm enjoying this conversation. What you guys said about when non-white people are arguing or going back and forth. Um, I agree with that, and I also think, and I was going to put it in the comments, but I didn't want it to be misinterpreted. But I also think it's due to non-white people not knowing how to have the conversation about our situation and our current plight. And so when they don't have the words, or they don't, they can't elaborate on the concepts or the constructs, that they're it's reduced to the infighting. So I didn't know what your guys' thoughts were on that, as far as being able to better articulate our positions. So if one of you guys could address that, that'd be great.
I agree. It definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for reminding me. It's all about the language. It's all about the words and how we need to get more accurate with words. And that infighting, that's exactly that's the frustration. We're dealing with the system, and you're gonna go out. You're gonna lash out at the person that's in front of you. We're not lashing out at white people. We're going at the person in front of us. We lack the language. We lack the accurate terms to use, the correct words to use. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, it is that. And that's where the programming and training comes in, because racist man and racist woman, they have trained us to go at each other, to use inaccurate terms when talking about racism, white supremacy. And that's what I like about the code. It clears up all that confusion. It clears up all that. And I say the code, I'm talking about the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Mr. Neely Fuller. I'm talking about that code. And yes, you're to build on it, but yeah, as far as understanding, that is the foundation of my understanding of racism, white supremacy, is from reading that book, asking white people questions, testing out the things that Mr. Neely Fuller has said, right? Testing it out. Oh, okay, he said that. All right, let me test this out. Let me ask this question. And why do I always get the same response from each I don't care where they are in the world. I always get the same response. They're ignorant. It's said in many different ways or the same way, but it's all, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's a pattern here. This is their code. This is the white code. Okay, play ignorant, act ignorant, be deceitful. Go ahead, EJ. You want to say something?
No, I was agreeing. The frustration when we fight each other, right? What I like that I believe the code gives it explicitly. Um, when you remove all of the terms the racists have given us, Your speech can be very simple and very direct. When the simplicity and directness of counter racism attempts is on the board or is in the conversation, um, racists have put a like a trigger in us to think that somehow this should not be this clear, concise, and simple. They have us believing like the like there's something supernatural because yes, they have a code and they have a way of dealing with us that stupefies us. And so I think yeah, when we get used to hearing reasonable discussions, we get used to being embarrassed by what they've done and what they do, because that's a part of it. I have to admit, when you aren't amazed because we're in a degraded position, I shouldn't say when you're not amazed, but because you acknowledge we are in a degraded position, you're no longer amazed when you hear insults from other people, no matter who it is, or when you hear when people are being discourteous, because it's like, oh yeah, they're supposed to act like this. We're supposed to be treated like this because that's the reality of our situation. That counters racism alone, that you know how you're supposed to be treated and you don't react in a way to create problems with the other victim. When other victims get used to, oh, that's how you're supposed to be. Yeah, it's easier. We need words, but we also need ways of perceiving that uh you can evolve in your psychological, emotional, intellectual, whatever response to the system. You can evolve to being calm. You can be very, very deliberately calm. Many victims have been taught that being calm is somehow it's uh, it's too mysterious. I've seen a lot of people's reaction when they first start hearing Mr. Fuller. They go in like they're trying to see behind the voice. Like, is this shit really real? Can it really be this? And as simple as it is, we get embarrassed with something we thought we knew, with something we've been doing or been engaging in forever, and it's been shameful. Yeah, we usually blow our stack. I know that once I saw or listened to people who had doctorates talk emotionally about racism, but still clear, reasonable, logical. Uh, it helped me relax when I would be frustrated or confused because I knew, oh, I just got to think about it some more, or I just got to get some more input, some correct information. You're right. I think you're right. The frustration comes from not being able to have the words and the ideas and the concepts to express what we're ruminating over, what we're picking up on, but don't really have the dialogue for. That's crazy. When you don't have words in your mind, you don't have certain psychological functions. You don't have certain intellectual capacity.
Or when you only have the words that, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that. Yeah, and I think that that's yeah, I think that that's what um, the white supremacists are banking on our inability to be able to have these type of conversations, not just among ourselves, but even with them. Because if you notice in some of these spaces, and I use that as an example because you see more of that on here, um, they still maintain this sense of denial that what our position or our quote unquote argument is, or the case that we make. They still, in their fashion, try to minimize, um, the key points of our argument. So,
White people don't really like to talk to us honestly about racism because they fear they'll have to kill us. They're afraid of what they might do to us. I really do think that. Right at the end of every white person who tries to act afraid of me, when I finally confront them on how much bullshit it is, they are ready to rip my flesh off. Little ass white women, little white girls and women. World War II veteran, this happened about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. World War II veteran who I got him to laugh and agree that he was a life taker and a heartbreaker, like they say in this movie about Marines, Heartbreak Ridge or something like that. And he proudly wears his multi-World War veteran caps and his medals. So he's a killer. He's a racist killer and has killed other people and went overseas and did it all, right? I calmly asked him a question at my occupation. And because it was firm and clear, he acted like I had pulled out a knife and put it in his face. He literally put his hands up and covered his head and cowered down by me asking a question clearly and directly. And when he put his hands down and the show was over, I asked him, "Aren't you a World War II veteran? A heartbreaker and a light taker?" He immediately, "Yeah, yeah," he answered, yep, heartily to both questions. And then I got quiet and said, "Then why are you acting afraid of me?" The look in his eyes went from pretending old man scared to, "Nigga, I should kill you right now." He said, he didn't even say another word. He simply walked away from me, didn't say another word. I think, yeah, white people, when we have discussions with them, like we know with Gus, right? With Gus and this last white person on the cows, what it is to be a white woman. We all I enjoyed that show, even though I hated it and I enjoyed it at the same time. Just a liar. Just a damn psychopathic liar. That's what they are. That's what they are through and through and through. I can't believe I tolerated this for so long. Because I kept coming to the same conclusion. These white bitches be lying all the time on everything. On anything. They could see a cloud. They'll lie and say they didn't see it just because you asked them. It's crazy. I mean, no, it's not. It's white supremacy. They are dedicated, very good, brilliant, evil geniuses. But I notice rarely do they come back for another interview because I think after the show they want to kill Gus. All them white people that got mad, them old white ladies and white intellectuals, they want to kill his black self. They want to murder him after that show. I think that's what they really are. Scratch the surface, they said. If you scratch the surface, these American whites, right underneath it is that savage from the British Islands. Savages. We have to be willing to scratch the surface. Calmly, like the code says. Mr. Fuller said one time, you should be able to sit with your white associate, and as soon as they practice, you should be able to go, oh, I suspect you're practicing racism. And go right back to relaxing. Because that's all it takes. Let them get flustered, frustrated, and, oh, what? And, yeah, I suspect you're practicing racism. And be willing to go whatever, however they want to take it. Be willing to go. We have to be. I think that's simple. What the universe wants us to do. Just be brave enough to face them. Just face them as they are. It's perfectly normal to hate your enemy. There's nothing wrong with hate. Hatred is a dedication. Hatred is what you do.
I was in a white space the other day, and so I asked a question. I was like, because I'm listening to them talk, just practice racism. And it's like, oh, we need to come together. Uh, talking about white people with non-white people, black people. We need to come together and all this stuff. So I said, so what are you doing? I'm asking all the white people in this space because there was also a non-white co-host. But my question was for the white people. So what are you doing to end racism? He said that it's never going to end and that, you know, we need to come together and talk about it. But, it's never going to end. You can't change people's heart. You can't. So when I asked the question, oh, this is another part of it. When I asked the question, I said, what are you doing to end racism, white supremacy? When he no answers, when he doesn't answer my question, but he just says buckets and buckets of words, he removes the white supremacy part and just said racism. That's why he said, oh, it's never going to end. Can't change people's heart. And I became annoyed and I went back to listening and then I left. But I failed right there. I failed because what I should have done is gone back into the room or went back on speaker and said, notice to non-white people, ask another question. So if it's never going to end, according to you, a white person, then what do we need to have the conversation about? That should have been my next question. That's where I failed at. I failed to ask that question because I got so annoyed with the atmosphere of the space. So I was like, what, let me just remove myself. And then my second thing I was supposed to do is say, notice to the non-white people. When white people say that it's never going to end, you can't change, white people hard or whatever, they're declaring war. They're saying that you will forever be my victim. You will forever be a slave. That is an act of war when a white person says, oh, it's never going to end. That is incorrect. No, it will end. It will. We have to learn this system and become smarter so we could defeat the system. But no, for a white person to tell you that it's never going to end, that is the declaration of war right there. Please, people, please get that through your head. It can end. They don't want it to end. See, that's different from it ending. They don't want it to end. When I say they, I'm talking about white people. They don't want it to end. But Yeah, I failed right there, big time.
Well, I would, if I were you, so I wouldn't take it as you failing, because I'm sure you wounded somebody somewhere. Okay, and so you left them in a more distraught position than you than being a failure. So, because everybody's not even going to ask that question, so don't take it as you failing. You shot your shot, you hit them, and sometimes in a battle, that's all you need. Okay.
And please let us not forget, which I love to remind myself of this. They're gonna give you another chance. Cause
Oh
they
yes,
are
sir.
dedicated.
Yes, sir. White people will always give me another chance to make. Oh yes. Oh, I agree with that. Yes.
We're gonna get a shot at the title again. So keep training. I love it. I love that they're dedicated and I'm dedicated and we fighting this. I love it. Y'all know we was born for this, right? You will never be more alive than dealing with this. And they think we be sad all day. Crazy niggas, Negroes. But yep, I count it as losses, the little stuff too. But I remember, oh, we're gonna run this back. It's just like years ago when I used to play one-on-one basketball for money. You could lose 3 games, but that dude gonna run it back because he don't want to box. He's not gonna walk off for $25 from this hot court after an hour and a half. We're gonna be punching, so he gonna run it back. That's how the races are. They gonna keep it going, so we can just tighten up a little bit and get ready.
SD Smoke and Damages. He'll be doing a space tomorrow on language, on words. Hope to see you there. I got to get the time. I forgot the time. I know it's tomorrow. I'm sure he'll post something later. But as far as the time and everything, um, I also want to suggest that we get the code book by Mr. Neely Fuller, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. There's 2 books. There's a word guide, and then there's another book. Um, I suggest you to read that. He also has a program every Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern, where you can ask him questions. But if you, I saw that. But if you ask a
That was a
question,
mistake.
if you ask a question, please be simple, direct, and precise. No speechifying. Just a suggestion. No speechifying. No, talking on and on and on. Make your question simple and direct, and he will answer you. He will. Even if you disagree with him, he will answer you. Who else I want to suggest? Who else I want to promote? I should make a list. I didn't make a list. Oh, there's a YouTube channel, Just a Vor. Check him out. He talks about the code. Just a VOR, all capital letters. Just a Vor. That's a new YouTube channel. He talks about the code a lot. There's CRWS. They have a YouTube channel. Check them out. They also talk about the code. And please check out the cows. Context of White Supremacy by Gus T. Renegade. Excellent. Learned so much from him. Yeah, the cows. C.O.W.S. As Dr. Lovely say. Shout out to Dr. Lovely. Yeah. Let me see. Anybody else? I can't think of anybody else.
Be persistent. Be persistent. Persistent, really, with reminding yourself of the opinions and the code to best keep conflict down. Resist the urge to call people for nothing. Resist the urge to go places for nothing. Even if you think it's nothing, it's something if it's not constructive. And don't be afraid to waste time edutaining yourself. Just reading something and deconstructing something for literally for just like a psychological break away from direct battle. Anything you deal with is going to be this warfare against them because they put their contaminants in everything. There's some also some new YouTube channels. I don't know if they're channels or if they're just like being put up by racists. They're putting up pictures that make you think of, oh, this is going to be something maybe about counter racism. But usually it's just some old history lesson, running old lies back, racist theories about the world and about the way we view life and existence. There's a new documentary or movie slash documentary. I don't know how new it is, but I just saw it recently. Saw it advertised. Jim Carrey and some other guy, where Jim Carrey is supposed to be explaining how you can have life purpose and clarity and spirituality if you just check out of this the bad world as he is painting it. You know, some of them like to say the world is bad. Not them, but the world. Unknown forces other than them. Avoid those type of things. So they just rock us to sleep with old rhetoric. And they give you a false hope that something's going to solve this problem other than us. When it ain't, nothing else going to solve them but us. Also, remember, they're not toxic. They're just terrorized by the system of white supremacy, convinced of deep, 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 long held lies since they were children, which we still are under their care. So it's easier not to get angry with them. But definitely no contact, no conflict.
We seem to have lost EJ. I don't know if he'll return. Anybody have um any thoughts before I shut this down? Because I really just created this space for him so that we could talk about racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works. So if anybody have any thoughts, feel
Yeah,
free.
I missed the beginning. I'm sorry I came late. Uh, was this can we see them as they are? I guess the question is who's the we and them? Who's the we and who's the them?
We as in non-white people, black people. Oh, wait a minute, he's back. Hold on.
Okay.
We as in non-white people, black people, them, I mean, yeah, them as in white people. EJ, he was asking about the title, and can you explain it? Joe the victim.
That title is exactly that. Can we, non white people, see the people who classify themselves as white clearly? Can we see them as they are? Or do we see them under the guise of the psychological lies they've embedded in us from our youth up? Do we see their open hostility? Do we see this tragic arrangement as such?
Well, my answer to that would be no. Majority of us don't see them as they are. Um, and it's not our fault, of course. It's the system of racism that's to blame for that. Um, the confusion uh, is really complete, and yeah, and it's kind of well, no. I do plan to continue to make that space that I had canceled. I do want to do it again. I'm thinking about. I know a lot of people gonna go to. Today is Saturday, so a lot of people probably gonna tune into Gus T Renegade today. So I don't want to like go between that, but I'm probably gonna do it tomorrow. But it's the basic is the words. That's where the confusion starts at, and so because we not using counter racist language, and the white supremacists using racist language, um, which is the dominant, factor. You know, racism, white supremacy being what it is, uh, their words is going to be supreme, and so us as victims using their words only continues to keep us in confusion. Like you were saying earlier a few minutes ago about us being children, and that's a you know one of the things that's difficult. It's difficult to uh the truth is difficult. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. The truth is difficult, and that's the only way you can really counter the system of racism when they're using deception is with truth. And if truth hurts, as we all know, we heard that slogan that as people call it, and so that truth that we aren't men and women, that we are children under the system of racism, we're slaves, we're prisoners of war. It's difficult for many of us to accept that reality. And although I think a lot of us do see racism at, but unfortunately, the white supremacists has conditioned us to see it in intervals or in incidents. We don't see it as a whole system, as everything that a non-white person does is involved in. Our whole desires, whatever it is that we desire to do and accomplish, so-called accomplish in this existence. And so, yeah, I don't think we uh, see them as they are. Unfortunately, no, it's very few of us who's been awakened to Mr. Fuller's work, Dr. Wilson, and people of the sort that are awakened to that and see them as they really are. It's like the movie They Live, you know, or even the movie The Matrix. So yeah, I'm off the mic.
Yeah, I suggest that non-white people, if you're going to watch a movie, watch They Live and think of the glasses as the code and take it from there. Go ahead, Martin. You have something to say?
Peace and greetings. Thank you. I obviously got up late. I worked late last night, so I missed the space. I apologize about that. Um, can we see them as they are? Excellent question. The answer is no, considering that we're still in a system of racism and white supremacy. So the answer would be no. Um, in my opinion and experience, there are many answers why we cannot see them. Um, I would definitely agree with Joe about it being the language. Mr. Fuller speaks about it. Gus T. Renegade speaks about the importance of words, the importance of counter thinking, so you can have basically a counter language. Um, to me, I see it especially through works like the Urugu. I definitely agree that will give you your They Live glasses once you read that book. as well as, in my opinion, I would say Yurugu. That's what really, I read that before the code. And that's what gave me a framework of what I'm looking at. Like it, at least with me personally, the levels of my confusion for one has been I'm look I'm looking at something and trying to understand it how I think about things. Um, I found that I have looked at them, those who classify themselves as white, as something as individuals or collectively something that wants to maneuver this existence like I attempt to. And I think that I projected how I view things collectively to other individuals. And when that's done with people who have with beings that have that much collective power and influence, and they're just the minority of the planet, I think that really shows to whatever levels of manipulation that they're using. Some say spirituality, whatever it is, it's working, horrifically working, and it's getting better and better, or more efficient every day, more destructive every day. Um, I think the question, can we see them? I think that really, I think that starts the investigation of what am I looking at. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Uh, am I allowed to speak?
Sure, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the I guess you call it, if I said it correctly, Joe. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm getting a call. Um, I don't know if you can hear the phone call. I'm sorry if you do.
Yes, yes, sir.
You
I
do?
hear it.
Okay.
I hear it
I'm sorry.
vibrating, sir.
Okay. All right. I just stopped it. So yeah. I see in a jumbotron. I guess that's what it's called. Says
You call it whatever you like. Some people call it the jumbotron. Some people call it the nest. So you call it whatever you want. Come up with your own term.
okay. All right. For now, I haven't made one up, so I just call it jumbotron for now till I figure something out. Anyway, so I see it's about the suspected racist who shot the black people because, and he said I shot them because they were black. Um, my only thought on that is that this is to be expected. Like this is this is a mindset of no. This is white culture. This is how they think. This is what they do. You know, kill people, kill non-white people. I feel like shooting some non-white people, so I'm go up to supermarket and find as many non-white people, particularly black people specifically, and try to kill them. That's to be expected. And unfortunately, not enough of us understand that we're under a system of racism, that we're in a war, and that's to be expected in a war. Um, and so, you know, that's it's just really unfortunate that not enough of us understand this. But it's my I feel it's my duty as a victim to speak the truth to what's going on. So say what I say, and it is what it is. Whoever agree, whoever non-white person agrees with that, they agree. If they don't, well, they don't. But I'm going to keep on speaking to what I consider or what I see as the truth, um, regardless of the pushback or whatever. I'm still going to say the truth about what's going on. So I think that's my duty to do that. So I'm off the mic.
I think that when it's said it's to be expected, I think that needs to be explained more for those who don't quite understand what we're saying or what is being said with that. Um, yeah, I could see, the super confused. People are still learning like myself. I could see how that could be a bit confusing. Anybody want to expand on why that's to be expected?
Well, I already said that we're under a system of racism and white supremacy. This is no, this is prison, the planet, not so-called America, but that don't exist. Just like so-called Africa and Asia don't exist. Only the system of racism and white supremacy, the only government, the only thing that really matters, the only thing that's real, that's true. And so that being the ultimate truth, you know, the reality is under a system of racism, a system based on harming, dominating, harming, mistreating those who are classified as non-white. That's what I mean by being expected. If the system is based on harming, dominating, harming, and mistreating non-white people based on color, then that's to be expected. This is what happens in war. People die. People get killed. I hope I explained myself enough. I'm not sure.
Yes, sir, you have. Yes, you have. You would like to speak, please?
Was that for me?
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. Um, yeah, just to make a comment on what you're saying. Um, never mind, never mind. He covered it. Um, I wanted to ask a question because I've heard this said by non-whites and whites, especially on the cows, and it goes with the I didn't even see the post in the jumbotron because they were black. Remember, they tried to shoehorn in anti-Semitism on Twitter. Um, I'm asking this for clarity because I have heard this topic brought up. Um, is it because we're black or is it because they're white? Because I've heard some logic behind that, and just for clarity's sake, not to obviously cause any conflict or either no one's opinion, everyone's opinion is valid, but I'm only asking it from the standpoint of when it was explained, saying that in a system of racism and white supremacy, we are mistreated because we are black. I tend to see the logic in that is incorrect because in essence, it seems that that's blaming the victim. Like we're persecuted because we are black. I think it's more accurate, in my opinion, to say that we are victims of racism because they are white. I think saying that we're treated like this because we are black is a form of blaming the victim. And I just want to see people's opinions on that.
It's a good question. I'm thinking. Go ahead.
Thank you. Uh, hmm. That's a good. That's a really good question. Um, I would even say it's because both. Uh, because we are. Um, well, first of all, us being black is the reality is we not black. That's the thing. So
we are classified as black, but we're not literally black, just like they're not literally white. Um, they classify us as black, but their purpose for doing what they're doing, the whole purpose of it is to harm and treat people based on color. That's what racism is. It's dominating, harming, and mistreating people based on color. And so, in a way, it actually both is, in my view, both could be true. They're doing because this is what they do. This is part of their culture of that they eventually just set up and say, hey, let's uh as Mr. Fuller will always say, I've heard Mr. Fuller say a lot, it's just basically royalism, but based on color. They decide to say, okay, instead of being royal based on lineage or based on how big your foot is or based on whatever people base royalism on, they change it over and say, well, we're gonna base it on some artificial thing called color. We're gonna color code people, call these people white, these people black, these people. We're gonna be white rather, and everybody else is gonna be brown, red, yellow, and brown, red, yellow, and what's the other one? Julie, I'm missing one, but yeah. So they color coded people, and so in a way, it's kind of both. In my view, I don't see it as blaming the victim. The victim, us as victims, we're not black, but they put us in this category of being black, and so that's the reason why they did it, because they say, hey, I'm classified as white, and I have the right or the will or the desire to harm and mistreat people based on color. That's why I made up a thing called race, so I can dominate you, harm and mistreat you. You know, you have the wrong color, and so that means I have to do what I do to you. But I could be incorrect. I'm off the mic.
Thank you. Go ahead, Immortal.
Okay, so that was a greetings to everyone, first of all. And um, that was an interesting question. Do they mistreat us because we're black? Like, I classify myself as black, not because of a skin color necessarily, but because of um, a phenotype. Um, uh, it's how can I put it like this? Let me just go straight to my take on it, because he was asking the question: do they mistreat us because we're black, or is it because they're white that they mistreat us? And the brother came up and said, basically, well, it's both. And my answer is similar to his. But my answer is that they mistreat us because they are not us. They mistreat us because they see things in us that they envy. They see things in us that makes them insecure. That's why I like the combination of the teachings of Neely Fuller Jr. And coupled with the understanding that Dr. Francis Cress Welsing brought, because sometimes logic and reason is not sufficient to understand the workings of some people's brain computer. Now you have to go into other things like insecurity. That's illogical. Uh, this self-loathing that these people have, they have a self-loathing. And many times it's a projection, the things that they say. They see all the accomplishments that we have, and then they project upon us their insecurities about that. And so they try to say, well, we did everything. We created civilization, when they didn't, so they do it because they're not us, is my answer.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Dr. Sinq.
Greetings, everybody. Yeah, I want to. So, I my VGQ is very similar to Joe's. I see it as both because they're the ones who did the classifying. They're the ones who divided the people up in on the planet into so-called races, and they're the ones that gave us the five-color racial classification system of white, brown, red, yellow, and black. And putting white on top, I believe that our mistreatment fuels white supremacy. Like there's no reason being a white person in the system of white supremacy has absolutely no value if there's no non-white people to mistreat. That's it.
Thank you. Go ahead, EJ.
It's a contract. It's a contract. It's not it's just like a construct. Contract is a construct. It's a concept in the minds of people, and they can fulfill it and make it a reality with certain behavior that's fueled by a certain thought for a deliberate goal. So there is no genetic or biological marker of race or color. They have decided through the practice of the just the establishment that there are not just one-hued people on the planet. There are multi-hued people on the planet that ultimately delineate down to the mutation or non-color of few of the people on the planet. So they made a contract, what that would mean to be this group of people. It's a behavior that you have to fulfill, and only certain people that have this mutation can fulfill it. It's not even offered to others. You may administer certain points of it or certain aspects of the domination or the abuse, but if you are not what they have decided is worthy of this contract of whiteness, both biologically through happenstance, but more definitely through commitment to behavior. That behavior is domination and abuse based on this lack of color that they primarily hold. The ranking system is based on a visible hue that they're able to perceive and we're able to perceive. But it's still domination and abuse, a contract of behavior. It's how different groups we call by geographical terms gained the W. It's well known. It's well known, and how you assimilate, how the Irish became white, how the Germans became white, how the Italians became white, how the white so-called Jew became white. They agreed to a contract of behavior that they will maintain and expand at all costs, at all times, in all things. They would be the dominant ones, and through their ability to say, I say so, they will be abusive. So it's not based on us. It's based on that continuous fountain of this contractual agreement that they have to fulfill in thought, speech, and action for the ultimate goal that they already have, which is maintaining the domination and abuse factor at all times between all people and all things, all areas of life sustaining activity. Because they've wiped out hues, they've wiped out groups of non-white people before, black, who were separated by concepts of ethnicity or federated states, economic unions, or whatever they were called, even matrilineal relations. They've wiped them out before. So there is really no truly a black. You're just the one that's getting it the most. And there's always going to be people that will be able to be classified as black. That's just what it is. Because it's based on treatment, it's not based on the hue. And if we read more of their domination worldwide and interaction with other people they've called different so-called races, you'll see this. Everybody's getting black treatment.
Yes, Immortal.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting dynamic. And I know you all have probably said this. Pretty I'm just now getting into the space in the last 20 minutes or so. And so I know you may have gone over this already. But you know, we do have to recognize that, you know, 85 to 90% of the planet is melanated, or otherwise, quote unquote, some yeah, melanated, non-white. Um, that's a precarious position to be in if you are non-white. I mean, if you're white, that's a precarious position to be in if you're white, being 10% or less of the global population. Um, and so to add to that, you have a culmination of recessive genes, recessive traits. And so, you know, these people, like a lot of people, like anybody, I guess, the first law of nature is self-preservation. Keep yourself alive. That's just naturally ingrained into most of us, no matter who you are. You're going to try to fight to stay alive. Something come against you. You see a dog or a wolf try to come at you, you're probably going to run or something of that nature, you know, or try to fight back or something. So keep yourself alive is just a natural thing that most living organisms do, no less people. So second law of nature is preservation of the species. Preservation of the species. Well, um, preservation of the species can break down into, you know, I think ethnicity is a real thing. I think that that's a real thing because it has to do with culture and how you do things. It's the doing part that makes a culture, and an ethnicity comes from a kinship of these people who practice this culture. So those are real things, whereas you might consider race a construct of some sort. So they are definitely a culmination of different ethnicities. And I think when you were mentioning that they were adding people to who is going to be considered white, is because they realized that they needed that gene pool. Um, so first point, they in a very precarious position. And I think that they are so intense with their activities, their racism activities, is because they feel as though their backs are against the wall, because preservation of the species in their mind means keeping people looking like them. Everybody wants their children to look like them. Everybody wants their grandchildren to look like them. You don't want them to look like somebody from Asia, and it's your child, and you know you're not from Asia. So that's just a natural thing. It had nothing to do with right or wrong. It just has to do with that's a natural thing within human beings. And so, yeah, they want to see white children. They want to see white grandchildren, and that's going to be impossible if they practice civility, if they practice justice and things of that nature. So I think that if you look among the non-white people, you'll find, I think if you'll find that there are at least enough people who are considered black, not just non-white, but so-called black, that would match their numbers. I think at least 10% of the global population would, a lot of people would consider them black. So therefore, now in conclusion, what I want to tell you is their genius lies in their, what's the word for it? Ferociousness, their willingness to do heinous things. Because most of the planet seems to me that based on the results that we naturally, for the most part, don't indulge in these types of activities to the degree that they do. Like they really, really are sadistic in the way that they carry out their keeping up the system of white supremacy. And if we were that sadistic, so for example, I know most people who I know who are considered black, we would never think of harming a child. We just wouldn't. It just doesn't come into our mind frame. I know that there are people who do harm children within the community, but they are very secretive about it, and they are they don't constitute the norm. And the reason they're secretive about it because we will become heinous against them. You know what I'm saying? It manifests. Everybody got these qualities and traits in them, but they manifest in different ways. So ours manifests as we mess with children, then we'll mess with you and try to produce justice to make sure you can't harm no children and you get the help that you need. And sometimes the help people need come in a hard pill to swallow. But I'm trying to give you an example of. Just to say shortly and to conclude, these people are sadistic. They are criminally insane. That is not to say that they're stupid. It is to say these people are criminally insane. They have created a criminally insane system. And I think the reason that we are suffering under that system is because we are not so insane that we would go out and just indiscriminately start harming white children, for example. Just indiscriminately start stealing them and hoarding them in a place where we could breed them and, carry out some form of, mistreatment against them, all type of stuff. That's not what we do in general, but that is what they do in general. So you're dealing with a very sadistic and determined foe. And I think that we're going to have to take a little bit more of a hard line when dealing with them. And I'm going to land it with that. That's not to say necessarily violence. Let me give you an example before people start talking about violence. It doesn't have to necessarily mean violence. It could mean just the things that Neely Fuller has suggested, like stop helping them. Just don't help them do anything. That includes don't spend your money with them. It includes that. Figure out a way, we very industrious, ingenious, figure out a way where you can get what you need without having to hand them your dollars. And it may mean that you're going to have to give up some convenience. The age of convenience is over anyway. Convenience stores are going to be a thing of the past here shortly. Their supply lines are already breaking down. Their white supremacist system is suffering under its own weight, even as we suffer under it. It's suffering some damage from the strain that it puts on itself. It's just a system that really can't be maintained forever. So yeah, just stop dealing with them. Stop. I saw in the Jumbotron where somebody put a really good 10 stops. These is examples of what I mean by take a hard line, and it doesn't necessarily mean violence. Like it says, stop squabbling among ourselves and asking the white supremacists to settle that problem. Like just that in itself, and stop spending our money with them and stop helping them. Just those things really take a 100% apathetic position towards them, in that you don't deal with them to the extent that you can. I know we are still in the system, but there is a great degree of things that we can do that don't necessarily require violence. So yeah, we need to take a hard line against them and really just get them out of our daily lives as much as possible.
When you were talking about sleeping with children, it sounds like you were describing white culture. Yeah, yes, that's something they do. They sleep with children, white and non-white. Um, yeah, and I think we also have to use, accurate terms when talking about racism, white supremacy. Most definitely. I think that helps as well, in addition to what you were saying. Um, it's all about the words. Words are very important. And we don't always have to use the words that white people provide us with. Or we can come up with our own definition of words, actually. Like we don't have to go along with what they say, right? And we can also eliminate some vocabulary, some of the terms that they give us. So yeah. So that's what I try to do. Really created this space for EJ. He's the one who created the title. You have anything else to say before we go, EJ?
I was just listening. Nothing added to say, really, because everybody said it. Yep.
Yes, sir. So might I suggest before I close this out, let's drink more water. Let's do the opposite of what racist man and racist woman want us to do. Let's be courteous towards each other. Um, yeah, no using profanity, even though it was used today. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But stop acting white. And I want to promote the code book by Mr. Neely Fuller, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Mr. Neely Fuller. He also has a word guide. I suggest you buy that as well. I'm going to promote a few channels. Just of War. He has a YouTube channel. He talks about white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. I also want to suggest Gus T. Renegade. His program is called The Cows, Context of White Supremacy. Mr. Neely Fuller, you could go to Produce Justice on Tuesdays, 9 a.m. Eastern, and you can ask him a question. Please be direct and keep it simple, not a whole diatribe of words. And yes, please keep it simple and short. But you can ask him questions. You can ask him questions about the code, about your daily existence, whatever. But just keep it simple. Keep it simple, please. I can't say that enough. Anyway, yeah, so if nobody else has anything else to say, I'm gonna let y'all go. Enjoy your day, be safe, and drink more water. Anybody have any last thoughts before I close it out in the next 2 minutes? Yes, Amaru.
Just to reiterate, they evil and sadistic. A sadistic, insane criminal. We could overrun them if we were as criminally insane as they are. We would suffer the losses of millions of men, women, and children to overrun them and erase them from the planet if we were as criminally sadistic as they are, criminally insane as they are. So I don't want y'all to be so hard on yourselves just because you're not criminally insane and you haven't figured out a way to get these lunatics off of us without wholesale slaughter across the planet. You know what I'm saying? That's really a noble thing that we're doing by looking for other ways to do it without necessarily wholesale slaughter. That's how I see them. I see them as they are. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, and I definitely agree. Criminals, sadistic? Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And with that, I shall end this. Peace.